Hi, hello, and welcome, or welcome back, I suppose. A few weeks ago, I came on here with a wee book haul from the bookstall on my local market. As part of that, I got the book we're going to be looking at today. Now, I've previously read one book by this author as part of my Iron Maiden video. That was Midwich Cuckoos, which, by way of the film adaptations, inspired the song Children of the Damned. While not a favourite, I recall really enjoying that book and have since been meaning to read more of his stuff. I have especially been looking to get Dave the Triffids at some point. I just, for whatever reason, haven't sought it out. But anyway, seeing today's read at the store made me hone in like a missile, and thanks to that, we're going to be looking at The Chrysalids by John Wyndham. This book is set post-nuclear apocalypse, or at least that's what we can presume. To the people we follow, the event was actually an act of God dropping something called tribulation. There is no longer anybody around who remembers the before times, and we're also generally living without any technology. We're basically in frontier land. I kind of assumed that we were in like a little English village in this post-apocalypse, but we're actually in Labrador, Newfoundland. Tiny little parochial English villages are kind of just Wyndham's vibes, but no, we are in Canada. I think Newfoundland counts as Canada. Anyway, the people here are deeply God-fearing, as you may have gathered, with a particular focus on purity. No, not like that, not in a virginal worship kind of way. Instead, they believe there is an ideal image of man. This also extends to plant life and animal life, but the vitriol lies primarily with the human race. The definition of man recited itself in my head. And each leg shall be jointed twice, and have 1 foot, and each foot 5 toes, and each toe shall end with a flat nail, and so on, until finally, and any creature that shall seem to be human, but is not formed thus, is not human. It is neither man nor woman. It is blasphemy against the true image of God, and hateful in the sight of God. Presumably, because of tribulation, there has been an increase of genetic mutations, and this is not well liked, to say the least. Specifically, we're following David, the son of the preacher who stands in the pulpit decrying those who are abnormal. The deformed are of the devil. According to what he preaches, these people are the devil's attempts at creating humans in God's image in order to ruin humanity. David, along with a small group of others in his village, have an unseen difference. They can read each other's, what they refer to as thought shapes. It basically means that they can communicate with each other without words and understand each other on a deeper level. They can read each other's thoughts, they can communicate in that way, but it's, while we're reading it, communicate to us as words, it's slightly more sort of translated with them than that. And of course, they can't tell anybody about this, but they find solace knowing they have each other. But before this comes to fruition, David is out playing around the hills and around their village when he comes across a young girl around his age from a nearby village. She's called Sophie. She's shy, but they quickly become friends in that way that children do so easily. But when she's injured while they're playing, he discovers, because her foot gets trapped, they have to remove her foot from sort of between a couple of rocks. He discovers that she has 6 toes. He gets her back to her family home, but he agrees to keep that safely hidden. He has no reason to share that. He wants to remain friends with this girl. He cares for this girl. He doesn't want her to be excommunicated for whatever reason, but unfortunately they do end up being discovered, and they are excommunicated from the area, and we come to find out that those who are different, as she is, get sterilized to prevent more like her being created, as if she didn't come from 2 non-mutated parents. I won't dive too much further into the story itself, as while it's only short, there's a huge amount packed in there, and genuinely something to be savoured. I was engrossed from the off and struggled putting it down. And I think a huge part of that comes down to the way that it definitely reads as allegory, and depending on the lens you're reading it through, the group that the mutated are allergies for is going to change. Early on, I was seeing it somewhat more broadly, a commentary on the ways in which we treat those who are sort of other. There are specific references to race in places, though that isn't the main focus, more a part of it. By that I mean they're talking about the ways in which people further out from where they are have all sorts of mutations, even more sort of terrifying than ones they've ever seen, and it comes up that there are mutations that, as they put it, turn people's skin black, and there are references to the fact that the strict older folks who believe in much harsher doctrines do often have elements of white supremacy within their belief systems, and there are also seemingly groups that focus in on the idea of white supremacy. And there's also the idea of the ways in which we treat those who are born disabled or deformed or anything similar to that. There are issues in treatments for this sort of thing now, but this book came out in the mid-50s. Lobotomies were only just falling out of favour by then. We weren't exactly favourable to people who fall into these groups. But I'm going to be honest, the further I went through this book, the more I was coming to the conclusion that this felt to me like an allegory for the treatment of gay people. I'm going to say specifically gay men. But of course, this is just my reading of it, because it is a lens I am pretty well equipped with. I cannot sit here and say this is what Wyndham was specifically alluding to. However, I have to put my degree to good use somehow, and this book made me feel like I actually want to read academic papers to see if I'm alone in these thoughts. But frankly, first of all, that doesn't happen too often, but frankly, I was never that good at using keywords to look up papers, so if anybody who is better than me at that can help me find something in that regard, I would be very appreciative. Thank you. Because think about it, homosexuality wasn't legalised in England and Wales until 67, with this book coming out a little over a decade before that in 55. It's no secret that those who preach in pulpits have a history of making those who are gay out to be these monstrous demons. Hell, that's still happening to this day, and there are ways in which Wyndham writes about the decried. And there are ways in which Wyndham writes about the decried in this book that really give me a strong connection to those kind of talking points. For a start, I mentioned earlier that those who are sent away to the fringes, which is the wilderness area outside of the regular society, they're sterilised. Here it's a way to prevent breeding between the mutated because of the fear that more will be created. That I mean, it's not the lens I was reading it through, but I know there were issues with black people, especially in America, with sterilisation. I don't know the history of that over here, and I don't know the history of that too strongly in general, so I am aware that that could be allegorical somewhat towards that, but I can't talk on it. But like I said, here it is a way to prevent breeding between the mutated, because there is that fear that there will be more of them created. But sterilisation isn't necessarily the punishment that was given, but chemical castration was, and they're not quite the same thing, but it basically is the same punishment given to those charged with breaking the laws pertaining to homosexuality. You know, in their case, it was obviously less to do with breeding more gays, but in the hopes that their libido will be reduced so much that they won't feel the need to quote-unquote offend again. That's what they did to Alan Turing and why he took his own life. It was not a favourable experience. Towards the end of this book, we hear one character remark, Why didn't they kill me? It would have been kinder than this. And it was this line that specifically brought Turing to mind. Chemical castration is not always a painless treatment, and frankly, I believe that's as much as the point. And frankly, I believe that's as much the point as the reduced libido, but that is just a pet theory. The allegorical nature of this book ekes its way into all sorts of places if you're looking for it. David's group of friends who all live in secret but are able to find joy because they can do so together. Think of the spaces people create so they can be themselves despite everything the world is throwing at them. We create spaces for ourselves to live defiantly because doing so publicly is dangerous. Think about raids on gay bars and that kind of thing. And there's the fact that women who produce 3 babies who are mutated are no longer allowed to procreate. I can't remember specifically what happens to them. I can't remember if they're excommunicated or if they are themselves sterilized. But many of these women would actually care for these children just the same, but they are not able to, and they have to outwardly say that they are pious and that they would not want this devil spawn. But frankly, they are still mothers who have had this child within them for 9 months, and yet will then have that child ripped from them post-inspection, and then just have to live with the fact that they know that their child has inevitably not made it, because the babies are sent out into the wilderness. Maybe, I assume they're also sterilized, and they are sent into the wilderness. Either they will die in a sort of Spartan way, or maybe somebody on the fringes will find them. Maybe. At some point we see a scene with David's aunt. She has a baby who is deformed, and we don't find out how, because that's not important. It's just a small thing that seems to be quote unquote wrong with this baby, but she doesn't want to lose it. I believe she is at the limit she can't have children after this, and it is heartbreaking. She doesn't care about that little difference. It's a child, for goodness sake. It does not have a choice in the way that it was made. And similar to this, I think I mentioned it earlier, but there's the fact that these people get sterilized, even though they all come from parents who pass all the little inspections this society wants to give them, in the same way that people, they're scared that gay people are gonna, turn your fucking kids gay, even though most of us are born from 2 completely heterosexual parents. It's ridiculous. And frankly, this book, no matter what lens you read it through, is at the end of the day about the need for change and evolution. The essential quality of life is living. The essential quality of living is change. Change is evolution, and we are part of it. Not only is the allegorical side of this book great, but Wyndham knows how to pack so much into so little space and say so much without having to say anything at all. And it never feels like you're being overwhelmed by this abundance. There are a couple of monologues that are a lot, but frankly they don't overstay their welcome too much, and there are only 2 of them, so my point stands. I love the way he balances what he tells you outright and what is left unsaid. Some things don't need to be lingered on and can be told to you outright, but other times he leaves you with just enough breathing room to let your mind delve deep into the smallest of phrases. Hell, even the title is a subtle little way of telling you about the meaning behind the book. While I enjoyed the Midditch Cuckoos, I adored the Chrysalids. it struck at my heart in ways I never expected. I was lured in by a blurb featuring massive horses, and I got snared by a book diving deep into what it means to be human and what it means to be othered. By the way, those massive horses that are in the blurb are fucking terrifying. The record in our real world here for the tallest horse is just about 21 hands high, meaning they're about 7'2". That's a big fucking horse. These massive bastards that show up in this book are 26 hands high, meaning they're about 8'8", and horses are measured up to the high point of their sort of back shoulder area. So these bastards are massive when they stand up fully, and probably get to over 9 feet at the top of their head. Draft horses, like Clydesdales, are already pretty fucking menacing animals. These things, I don't actually know if that's still a horse. Maybe the preacher is right and they are an affront to God. I don't know, because the idea of standing anywhere near this, there is a scene where that horse is barreling at someone. Absolutely fuck that. Anyway, if there are any books like this you can think of, please do let me know in the comments below. I love a well done allegory. I'm always going to be a sucker for allegories about people who are othered in some way, be that to do with gender, sexuality, race, disability, anything like that. I think there's something about the ways you can read deeper into stuff like this that's always going to get me. Again, my degree was chosen for a reason. But I think we're going to get cozy next week with a look into a book that I've been meaning to get my hands on for ages now, and I decided to get it from the library recently, and that is Legends and Lattes. To make sure you're up to date with everything I post, feel free to like, feel free to subscribe, and feel free to ring that notification bell. All that cringe shit I'm supposed to ask you to do in my videos. But most importantly, I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, a wonderful whenever you are watching this. Take good care of yourself. Right.